What the flick, everybody? Mad Men, season 6, episode 5, The Flood. The Flood. Alonso Duralde's not here. He usually tells us what the theme of the episode was.
What it's really about.
What it's really about. Here it's about, I have no earthly idea, literally.
Yeah, I tried to figure it out without Alonso, and I got halfway through, and then I was like, I'll just wait till Monday, and then Alonso will tell me. And then it turns out he's not here. All right, no, so the Flood obviously references Ginsburg's dad, talks about it in The Flood. Couples go together.
Yeah.
So obviously it has something to do with relationships, but I thought that it also had to do with things flooding in, like Don's emotions flooding in.
I thought also the flood of like that really powerful speech that Don gave about a father who's like, you learn, you got these kids and you're like,
oh my God, yeah.
I know I'm supposed to love them, and I tell people and I give out cigars and I do this, but I don't feel it. I don't feel it, and this guilt comes, and then one day
it floods in.
It floods in.
Yeah. So that's exactly right. And I thought that Don speech was probably the most pivotal speech of the whole season, because the whole part of, to me at least, part of the point of Mad Men is trying to figure Don out. He's the biggest mystery in the whole show, in the Vims of Mad Men. Like, who is Don? And I feel a little gay about it. Not that there's anything wrong about it, in the sense that, I'm like one of Don's girlfriends, and I'm trying to figure him out, and
Right.
I'm intrigued by it, and he keeps sucking me in, like I gotta figure him out.
You were intrigued by it, too.
Intrigue and mystery. And so there we get as big an insight into who Don is as we've ever had. Like, if you had asked me, does he love his children? I would have been like, I don't know. And hence, what kind of person is Don? I don't know.
Or, to his credit, he looks like someone who loves his children. He plays the part well, but does he really? You're right, we didn't know until this episode.
Right. And as always, you're conflicted with Don. Dude, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Why didn't you love your children from the beginning? But on the other hand, you had such a crappy childhood that who am I to judge?
And he explains that.
Yeah.
And is it okay, by the way, if you don't feel instant love for your children, to pretend? I mean, I think you could pretend.
I think you're supposed to.
Right.
I think they'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe it is
No, but
okay.
by the way,
you could
some
pretend
people
better
don't,
than
though,
Don.
especially-
It's not like it wasn't really pretending all that effectively.
Yeah. A lot of people don't. I think that's like an experience some parents have, like especially the man in the relationship, he has to form some sort of bond with the child. So that's kind of understandable. But in terms of being conflicted about him, I'm not conflicted about him at all. I don't like him. I can't
that's
stand
interesting.
him. Yeah, I can't stand him. I think he's super selfish. I think he's super self-absorbed. He's very insecure about his wife filming a love scene for her career, but in the meantime, he's like fucking the doctor's wife upstairs. Like, it's totally unacceptable. And I think that it is symbolic of how most people who
They're
are
not filming that. Yeah.
No, they're not filming. What do you mean, filming him
Having sex with the doctor's wife, right? That's off camera. So
Right,
that's,
right,
so it's
right.
totally
Except-
different.
No, okay,
Yeah.
He's just so selfish and self-absorbed. I can't stand him, and I'm tired of his mystery. Like, I don't want to know his mystery anymore.
I've disagreed this whole time until about half a second ago, because to piggyback on what Anna said, I wonder if this, because I'm like, but Anna, it's Don, and it's intriguing, and we just want to know him, and we want to figure him out. But if Don was Donna, would we give her 3 seasons of apologizing for her and pretending?
For crying out loud. We're having these battles on Twitter with people who are ready to bring the house down on Joan because she did one thing that Don does every day.
No, Joan's the best.
In order to
Lay
get
off.
ahead, and
Joan is so sassy.
Oh,
like I like how she like dominates that.
Well, let's talk about
office.
this then, because you're bringing it up. Because we had Cenk and I a little back and forth on Twitter with Professor Rich, who we're going to assume speaks for many others, about our instant and savage takedown last week of Harry for his going into that boardroom and sort of exposing Joan and this really inappropriate interpersonal
and he's
behavior.
only gotten more deplorable, by the way.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah. And then, but Professor Rich pointed out that that Harry's reaction was understandable, and how would we feel, paraphrasing, and help me out if I leave something out, Cenk, that how would we feel if we'd worked really hard all our life, which Harry had, and pretty effectively also, which Harry had, and then this girl comes in and sleeps with the right powerful guy and skyrockets above you and becomes partner.
So I partly agree with him. However, you have to keep in mind that Joan has been with that company for 15 years. And on top of it, think about how the system is set up for women at that period of time, right? Women aren't given the opportunities to move up in a company.
Be head of television.
Yeah.
I think you're underselling it because I don't agree with Professor Rich. I think he's 100% wrong. I think he makes interesting, valid points, but the overall conclusion is dead wrong. The shame for me is that Joan was put in that position, and that the only way she was ever going to be partner is to be done is you have to commit this act, which you hate, which everyone else disapproves of. Like,
And it wasn't her idea.
The game is rigged
Exactly,
way more against Joan than it is
Yeah.
against Harry. His point was like, Harry's not powerful. He didn't come from money. He's either not handsome like Don.
Right.
But Don is not just handsome. There are a lot of handsome dudes.
Yeah.
Don is also brilliant, so it's not quite fair. But that Harry's not handsome and he doesn't have connections like Pete.
Right.
But again, I think those facts are a little bit manipulated to make Harry seem much more of a victim than he
Now,
is.
I'll give Professor Rich a lot of credit. I mean, he swung me 40% back. I thought what Harry did to Joan was unacceptable. And then I was like, yeah, man, I see Harry's had a tough life, and then, and he's done great things for the company, and he doesn't get a partnership while somebody gets it for their connections, all these different things. But then it turns out this episode killed Harry
I was going to
Crane.
say, but now
Like,
do you give
yeah.
a shit whatsoever
But
how Harry feels?
I don't want to give that up quite yet because that's true, and I think that it's legitimate for Harry to be pissed, and I think it's legitimate to go into that office and argue his case angrily and to look for work outside to find somebody who appreciates it. But you've got to take responsibility for your own actions, and you don't go into the office and find the weakest point that somebody had in their life and expose it publicly for your own good.
And I'll add one last thing to it, and to do it to the weakest person in the room in terms of the power structure. If he had said to Pete, oh, Pete, with your father-in-law's connections, way to be on the board. Don, way to be on the board because, you can, have sex with anybody you want or whatever it is. Roger, come on, when's the last time you did anything productive in your life?
Right.
You were handed everything on a silver platter, but he didn't go after the big power players. He went after what he perceived to be the weakest person in the room. No, Professor Rich was a nice try. We're done with Harry Crane. He's a bad guy. We're moving on.
Done with you, Professor Rich. we're not done at all.
Okay, so
I bet you're not even a professor. Just kidding. I don't want to be involved in the flame war.
right. By the way,
you're probably very accredited.
The great irony is he's not a professor.
Oh, okay.
That's
okay.
our nickname for him.
Got
He's
it.
a teacher in
Amazing.
Texas. Okay. Anyway, so second pivotal moment of the show for me relates to all this. Martin Luther King gets shot. We knew that was going to happen at some point in this season.
I don't like them bringing in a character that we didn't know anything about, and then we're supposed to care when he dies.
Okay, so this is the main reason I watch the show, not just to figure out who Don is, but because of it's a period piece. It just is like a really recent period piece. And so my favorite moment, because it was how devastating it was when the black worker at the diner that Ginsburg was at has to sit down at the counter for a second, right? And you could just see how devastated he was. And by the way, I'm overly emotional, and I've always been overly emotional about Martin Luther King. Immediately started crying during the scene, and etc. And then what was fascinating, though, and what really interesting about it, was the reaction of the white characters. One, they're split a little bit already. Like, the women are really kind of devastated by what happened. Some of the men are like, okay. Some of the men are like, that's a shame.
Right.
But we knew it was going to happen.
Right. And then they're conflicted within that. To like, hey, that's a shame what happened to him, and it was barbaric, and I'm concerned about my safety more than anything else.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, that was a minor bad thing. These guys rioting is a major bad thing that could affect me, and and it gives you a sense of what people thought back then, and that's a little devastating.
There's Harry.
Yeah, Harry on the total wrong side. Pete's finest moment, though. Like
Okay. Pete, I've never been a fan of. He's the worst, whatever. He's Pete. He's ugh. But now I'm like, Pete. And I don't want to be like, oh, congratulations for doing what you're supposed to do. But like, Pete, like he was really.
There's more that he's supposed to do.
Yeah, he was really. He was a great man. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, he was principled.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was a total salvation moment. You summarized it perfectly, Pete. Ugh.
And also, I think a legitimate
Before
concern
that.
about his family, wanting to be with his family, wanting, when the flood comes, wanting to be with the person he loves, not in a way of, I'm going to use this. He did not use this tragedy to worm his way back into the home.
What's his wife, Trudy?
Yeah,
Trudy.
Trudy.
I never liked Trudy,
Yeah.
so I didn't mind him cheating on her that much. but he was kind of mental about it, and he's kind of a Weasley character. So,
Yeah.
but it was big time redemption
Why
with
don't you
liking
like
King.
Trudy? Like, what did
She's
She's like
whining
society, and she doesn't.
yeah.
She did not listen to him. She's like, "We're gonna live out here in the suburbs," and he was like, "Please don't, please don't, please don't, please don't."
And she's like,
But she revealed in the.
She's such a good actress, though. She's so good because she's so good on Community.
Oh, yeah.
A totally different character, and she's great.
But she revealed, and was it the last episode or the episode before that, when she was like, I wanted to give you your apartment in the city so you would keep it in your pants until you got, to Manhattan, but you couldn't do that. So I feel like she was kind of playing this chess game with him all along. Let's have our family over here, and you bring your life back to the city.
Yeah.
And I get that.
I get it, but it's not. It doesn't make her. That's not appealing to me. That's not an appealing woman to me.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
last thing on Pete is that, now that I look back at it, now that I like him because of the King comments, well, first of all, they got married really young back in the day, right? So, I mean, if you're a powerful guy in your 20s, how much would you want to have more sex?
Oh, yeah.
Let's keep it real. And back then, cheating on your wife wasn't seen as it is today.
Yeah.
I'm excusing it a little bit. I get that, right?
It's just commonplace. Like everyone's like.
Yeah, but I mean, the getting married when you're a kid. I mean, it's foolish. It's foolishness.
Yeah.
So the Pete moment was great, and that the Planet of the Apes, that bonding moment with Don and Billy. Bobby was awesome, and then that moment where Don feels that rush of love for him when he said it's okay to the black usher. It's okay. Everybody wants to go to the movies when they're sad.
Yeah.
That was just like he understands. Like all of a sudden he sees the world, a bigger picture.
And I think that Dawn and January, what's her name? Betty, are just neck and neck every episode for who loves their kids less. So I think Dawn shot way ahead in the love department because Betty is just, I mean, there's so much in general with a lot of these
I don't even want
characters.
to talk to you right now.
Yeah, she's just like, she's never given a shit about her kids. I mean, has she?
Yeah.
Did I miss something?
No, of course not. That's part of why we don't like her. And although, just quick aside, I thought the most devastating scene in this episode was when her husband says, "Oh, I'm going to show you to everybody," and she's like, "Oh no, I forgot about that."
Right.
And then she's with the dress.
Right.
And like,
Well, we're gonna get January Jones back, I think. Maybe.
I don't. But she's looking at that dress like
Are we
I
gonna
can't
get a
fit
workout
into it.
montage?
We might get a workout montage. Yeah.
Yeah. Dun 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 dun. She's chasing chickens in the
How bad a
backyard.
guy is Henry Francis though? Like you learn. It's funny because I mean.
Not a bad guy.
Really? I thought he was maybe the only likable character in the whole show.
No, I hate Henry Francis.
What?
Why?
Well, because we learned why he wants to run. Like he's like in the and Mayor Lindsay's out there like forming these deals to keep the city at peace. He's like, you know what that is? It's kowtowing. It's negotiating with hoodlums. I do it differently.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
Like Henry Francis, that's one of those late '60s, like seems like a friendly guy, Republican racist. Like that's what it. Hoodlums.
That's
Like it's not. He
But
doesn't
up until then, I mean, he'd been a
He's okay.
sweetheart to Betty.
He took
and-
care of the kids, and of course, Don, his redemption goes even further when, after he has this moment with Bobby where he feels the rush of love and he's lying down next to him, and he doesn't get offended when Bobby says, "What if somebody shoots Henry?" Like
I'm not
doesn't-
sure he didn't get offended. That's still a part of the mystery of
Sure,
Don.
but he didn't. He stayed with Bobby. He stayed with his son. He didn't make his son feel bad.
But then he went out on the porch and thought about it. And I thought, oh boy, like, is he back to, I was right all along, I don't love him.
From this,
I think but I still think that's more likely to be like, I got to connect with my kids better. They're my kids. They're not his kids. I mean, he did say that wonderful line of he's not important enough, which was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Meghan and Henry should just go off and raise these children and give them a chance, a fighting chance in this world.
Henry's clearly a good father. That part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, this is really bizarre, but I'm annoyed at Don for caring so much what's happening to his mistress in Washington.
Yeah, he's falling for her.
Yeah, and I'm
yeah.
like, that's not fair. I get having sex with her, but Megan's been so great to you. Why are you falling in love with this random woman that you're sleeping with? You know you do this every time.
because
You're-
that's
He's a
part of it.
douche. Like I can't stand Don.
But
He
that's,
can't.
that's who
The worst.
he is. He slips this, this intriguing woman into the role of mother, and then he has to go find another intriguing woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I hear what you're saying, Anna. You're a little disgruntled with the show, right?
Yeah.
And because, like, who are we rooting for at this point? Everybody's kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, the characters are either like mediocre and you don't really care one way or another, or they're you just dislike them. And
Yeah.
at this point, I've gone from liking Don to really disliking Don. And I'm hoping that there will be some redeeming qualities sometime in the future. But the thing is, look, and I don't want people to misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not angry with him just because of the fact that he's cheating. It's the fact that he's being a total dick to his wife as she's, filming this show. He never watches it. He never goes to the tapings or the filmings or whatever. And he shows up during that one scene to kind of to make her feel bad about it. And then behind the scenes, he's doing all these hideous things. So it's
some hypocrisy makes people appealing. Some hypocrisy makes people repulsive. This is
Yeah.
a moment
But
of
don't
repulsive
forget,
hypocrisy.
Don is also the guy who brought Betty up, right? And is the most decent to Joan out of anybody, right? And so there's a side of him that really wants to give people a chance that no one else
I
does.
don't actually think he's selfish. I think you said that in your early criticism of him. I don't think he's totally selfish. I mean, he is, you saw him very worried about Sylvia. You see that he was worried about Joan. He's willing to not take glory sometimes in order to sort of succeed. He is confident, but I don't think he's that selfish. But the flaws are undeniable. The most appealing character might be Dawn.
Oh yeah, we don't know yet.
We don't know yet, but I loved Joan's hug of Dawn.
And she was like,
yeah, I just like to do some work.
Yeah.
Like,
Anyone have anything for me to file?
That's part of what I loved about this episode, that every white person assumed that they had to ask every black person, "Are you okay?"
Yeah. And before, so we have a chance to talk about this, ironically, the dude that we were kind of BSing about after the show last week, what's his name? Tom Cruise's cousin from Lost. That we were talking about,
right?
made an appearance.
Right.
What the hell was that? Am I too young to understand? Did I miss something?
You remember what Tecumseh said?
What is wrong with you? He's like, I was trying to communicate with you without speaking. Like, am I missing
It was
something?
a joke I didn't get.
Yeah,
Like I was
neither.
like, why are they humoring this insane
He said
person?
to Roger, "Have you forgotten what Tecumseh said?" And he says and then he's like, Roger's like, "Yeah, I did forget that."
Yeah. What is up? What did I?
I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I assume that's a groundwork laid for a future appearance from those insurance
Fair enough.
guys. All right, we got to go.
So last two quick things.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I still like the show is that I understood finally with the difference between the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side.
At the time,
like, all that little history that you miss, because you learn about, Louis XIV, you learn about the Roman Empire, but like the history, like 10, 20 years right before you were born, you don't learn that much
What
about.
was up with 96 and Central Park West in
Right.
1967?
No, because my whole life when I've been growing up, Upper West Side has been perfectly
Beautiful,
great.
yeah.
And I've always, like, in New York, people are like, Upper West Side. I'm like, are you mental? What do you mean? I don't get it, right? And it turns out Upper West Side back then was a dump, and they rebuilt it up. And it's all, and the reason why the Upper West Side people are much better than the Upper East Side people is because they actually worked their way up, as opposed to being old money on the Upper East Side, who are the douchebags in New York. So finally, I got it.
Lower East Side, the wonderful relationship between the Ginsburg and his dad, which is enormously appealing.
Yeah.
The whole date was good, and we learned that his name on the show is Michael Ginsburg, and he's played by Ben Feldman. So,
all right. And my last thing, that's really funny.
Which is like, by the way, just like Y50, Cam Fong as Chin Ho.
And Rashid Dostum, the Afghani warlord, played by Gulbuddin Hekmatyar.
Totally, exactly. That's right.
Anyway, last thing is that dad. I figured out. That's my favorite character in the whole show.
Yeah.
How much do you love that dad? I don't know. Maybe it's like he's an immigrant dad. Reminds me of my dad looking out for his son.
You can't cook, you can't clean, you can't sew. Do you see what's missing here?
Yeah, I love that
Awkwardly
guy.
looking out for his son.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And
All
the
right.
girl was very nice.
She's
Hopefully
good.
she
She was
sticks
cute.
around.
I hope she sticks around too. All right. Next week for episode 6 of Mad Men. Thanks, everybody.